Well, it's a very interesting situation in the US markets right now because the Fed has basically said it's going to be calling off quantitative tightening, QT. And that is the whole picture of the market up to now has been the QT that started just over a year ago. And it was been sucking money out of the world economy, been sucking money out of assets, and that has been pulling them down. You can look at mortgages, for example. The Fed has a huge pile of those, and it's been taking a lot of money out of the mortgage business by selling back the mortgages that they have on their books for cash, essentially. So, in effect, draining money out of the mortgage market, which makes mortgages more expensive and harder to come by. Anyway, the overall picture of that money being drawn out of the market has meant that equity markets and house prices all around the world have been under a lot of pressure, and particularly in the developing markets, which have been the first markets to feel the drain of the cash. Because when any central bank injects money into the economy, it doesn't just stick around in the local economy. It goes into the world markets and it will seek out high returns. And those high returns tend to be the more riskier markets or the emerging markets. So when you get QT, the first money to leave is the money that leaves from the emerging markets. And that's why they've been very hard hit over the last year or so. But anyway, thanks to the fact the market nearly crashed at the beginning of the year, and to the fact that the Trump administration has worked out what was going on, and basically complained in public via Twitter about it, and in private apparently over a dinner, the Fed has now come out in a series of speeches, made it clear that QT, quantitative tightening, is soon to be ended, which leaves them with a huge balance sheet rather than a less huge balance sheet, which they were aiming for. Now, interestingly enough, they're taking the money out of their mortgage book, not out of their treasury book. And you might wonder why. Well, obviously, mortgages are more at the far end of this kind of operation. But also, America is about to run a $1 trillion deficit, and it will have to issue a lot of treasuries for that. Now, the last time during the global financial crisis, when the appetite for treasuries dried up, guess who bought them? The Fed bought them. So in effect, the government bought its own debt. Now, when a government buys its own debt, it's exactly the same as printing cash. And the reason QE, quantitative easing, didn't create inflation is that it created assets and liabilities to match them. So it wasn't actually just printing money, it was liquidizing less liquid assets and pushing it towards cash, but by not just printing it, but by basically saying, hey, your debt, nobody particularly wants it at 99, we'll buy off you for 100 in cash. So somebody lost an asset worth 99 and got back cash to the tune of 99 and a half or whatever. So no new money was created. It was just shuffled around and made more liquid, and therefore it flowed around the market better and helped get everybody out of the global financial crisis. Now, however, if they're going to go around buying the new treasuries, that's different. That's just like printing cash. And it won't be going into financial assets. It won't be going into the cash flow businesses as QE did. It will be going into the pockets of the public sector. So basically, they'll be doing what Mugabe does probably still, or his guys do anyway, what they're doing in Venezuela, what they do in lots of emerging economies, which is the reason they have inflation is that they pay the government in money they just printed. So the salaries of the public sector are paid in cash, which is barely dry. Now, obviously, the public sector doesn't make stuff, but if it's getting money, it's creating new demand, and therefore that's what pushes prices up. So America is going down this inflationary road by the looks of it, which will have major ramifications going forward. What exactly that will be, well, it's going to take a bit of time for that to become apparent. But it looks like QT is dead. We might be getting some QE even, but that the rise in the national deficit in the US is going to turn into a form of naked or at least semi-naked monetization, which will generate inflation, you can be assured.